Hi, welcome to Balfour Meagher. Today we want to talk about contracts. Oh, alright, that sounds boring already. No, this is quite important. You'll be surprised. In everyday life, we actually are dealing with contracts, but in the business world, they're super important. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, it's got to be in writing, and it's got to be signed, and it's got to be witnessed, and so forth. That's definitely not the case. Contracts can be accepted in many ways. The common way is that you may actually receive the contract and sign it in writing. Of course, but nowadays we have digital, so we can do things like DocuSign, so you can have electronic signatures. But you don't even need a signature to be bound by a contract. Legally, you just have to show that you've accepted it. So quite often you may accept a contract by performance. You know when you go into a car park and you see all that sign in front of you before you take the ticket in writing, which unfortunately most people don't read, well, you, by taking that ticket and driving forward, have accepted that contract. That's how contracts can occur, and that's called acceptance by performance. The other way that you can do it is verbally. You can say to someone, I'd like you to do this, and if someone does what you've asked them to do, and you'd agreed the terms and it was certain, and there was consideration or value for it, you'll have a legally binding contract, even if it's not in writing. It's one of those things where I actually don't want to see people have arguments and go to court and everything like that. You actually want to have certainty, and that's why we like to have things in writing. But don't be confused, just because you haven't signed something doesn't mean you're not bound by it. Probably one other point to note on that is quite often you might have a service provider send out a quote, and in that they contain their terms and conditions. You receive it in an email, maybe a PDF format attaching that. And then the next thing you do is you're happy with what they do, so you say go ahead, or you may even pay their first invoice. But later on you have a dispute, you have a problem, and many years down the track you might say, well, I didn't sign that contract. But you, by accepting that contract in form of paying that invoice, have accepted their terms and conditions because you didn't show that you rejected it. In fact, you unilaterally accepted it by giving them the money or paying the terms. So it's something very, very important to understand, and it's not something you want to get into a legal fight about when you've actually got a binding contract. Of course, the devil's in the detail, and there is definitely no such thing as a standard contract. So again, you need to read things before you enter into it. It's probably the other tip I'd like to make is quite often you'll see people, when in the computer days where you download software and you see that pop-up box and it goes next, and you go next, 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 and there's a big scroll of text. Well, guess what? You've accepted that contract there. Just the fact that you haven't read it all doesn't mean you're not bound by it. And I can assure you, you don't want a lawyer to read a contract after you accept it, because all we're going to do is tell you the bad news. We want to add value and we want to look after your interests. So the trick is to read it. If you don't understand it, clarify it with the other party. And if you're still not sure but you want to go ahead, that's when you seek advice. It's better to be proactive rather than reactive. As they say, prevention is better than cure. So just understand with contracts, there's many different ways that you can accept or perform a contract. Hopefully you found this useful.